I'm going to start with, I'm very sorry to anybody who's taken offense.
So you know how celebrities love to claim they are just like us? Yeah, except most of us don't get caught making racist comments on national TV. But some of these female celebs managed to do just that. And they probably thought they should just hit the oops, my bad button and move on. At number 1, Sarah Silverman. Sarah Silverman is comedy's edge kid sister, who thought being offensive was the same thing as being hilarious. And to be fair, she has made a career out of pushing buttons.
Because I'm so afraid of being like a complaining Jew.
But back in 2007, she pushed the wrong one. She thought it would be genius to throw on blackface for an episode of the Sarah Silverman program, and then joke about looking like Queen Latifah. Yeah, because that was bound to go over well. This was not some underground comedy club thing either. It was right there on TV. Like, imagine filming something that racist and then deciding, this is it. This is comedy gold. Even if you somehow missed the memo on why blackface is racist, her casual delivery made it 10 times worse. Sarah tried brushing it off as satire, but it came across like someone who thinks pulling the fire alarm is a social experiment. Apologies came later, but it was one of those half-hearted, I am sorry if you were offended things.
I'm sorry.
And I mean, sure, comedians push boundaries, but at some point, it stops being boundary pushing and starts being straight up ignorance on full display. Number 2, Sharon Osbourne. Sharon Osbourne's entire brand is built on being brutally honest. But there's a difference between being blunt and just saying stuff you should not say.
Thing that I had to do to protect myself by being a big mouth, by being overly vocal.
In 2018, during an episode of The Talk, she decided to share her take on Meghan Markle's racial identity. She basically shrugged off Meghan's blackness like it was some sort of fashion choice. She claimed Meghan does not look black, like racial identity is a hairstyle you can just switch up for Coachella. It was weirdly racist and ignorant, especially coming from someone who has spent decades in the entertainment industry, where identity is constantly scrutinized. What made it worse was how casual it all felt, like she was stating some obvious fact, not realizing or maybe not caring that she was just erasing someone's identity in real time. And when the backlash came, Sharon went into damage control mode, trying to explain herself, but it felt like she was missing the point entirely. Number 3, Amy Pascal. You would think if you are running Sony Pictures, you would be smart enough to avoid putting racist comments in writing. But Amy Pascal had other plans. Back in 2014, a bunch of emails between her and producer Scott Rudin leaked. They were joking about Barack Obama's supposed movie preferences. And of course, their guesses were all films centered around black struggles. It was that classic Hollywood mindset where black people are only ever allowed to watch movies about slavery or civil rights. Like, Obama could not possibly enjoy a Marvel movie or, I don't know, Die Hard. This was not just a slip-up, it was a straight-up glimpse into how some of the most powerful people in the industry talk when they think no one is listening. Amy's apology came later, but it was like trying to mop up a flood with a tissue. And the whole thing just confirmed what a lot of people already suspected about Hollywood's progressiveness. Number 4, Lena Dunham. Lena Dunham has that special talent for making everything about herself. And in 2016, she somehow managed to turn an entire Met Gala into her own personal pity party. She attended the event and noticed NFL star Odell Beckham Jr. sitting nearby. Instead of just, I don't know, minding her own business, Lena decided he must be ignoring her because she did not fit his idea of feminine beauty. It was like she wrote a whole novella in her head about how he was judging her when, in reality, he was probably just wondering if there were any sliders left. She later admitted that her racist comments were presumptive and rooted in her own insecurities, but the damage was done. The whole thing felt like she was painting him as some sort of shallow villain without even having a conversation with the guy, and then broadcasting her assumptions for the world to dissect. It was one of those moments where you realize some people have main character syndrome so bad they can't even imagine someone else just minding their own business. And then at number 5, we've got Carla Sofia Gascón. While most of these other incidences were isolated slip-ups or dumb comments, Carla went full offensive on a worldwide tour. So, 2025 rolls around and surprise, surprise, old social media posts come back to haunt her. Except these were not just questionable comments. They were straight-up racist and religious rants targeting multiple groups.
Islam is becoming a hotbed of infection for humanity that urgently needs to be cured. Alongside a Muslim family photo, she called Islam a deep, disgusting humanity.
It was like she took a checklist and made sure she offended as many people as possible. She had tweets where she called Muslims violent and backwards. She made disgusting jokes about the religion and kept throwing out stereotypes. And it was not just Muslims she targeted. She went after Black and Latinx communities too, using slurs and stereotypes like it was her favorite hobby. People started digging up receipts from as far back as 2018, and it was clear this was not some one-time slip-up. She had a whole catalog of hateful content aimed at different groups. Screenshots were all over the internet, and the outrage was instant. When she finally tried to apologize, it was the same half-hearted mess you hear every time someone gets caught being racist online.
She said, tearfully adding that she felt the public made her out to be a terrible monster.
She claimed she had grown and changed, but nobody was buying it. Her brand deals tanked, her reputation was shredded, and most people decided she was not worth forgiving. At number 6, Azealia Banks. She has always had a reputation for starting drama, but in 2016 she crossed the line that most people don't come back from. After accusing Zayn Malik of copying her style in one of her music videos, she launched into a racist and Islamophobic rant on Twitter that went way beyond just throwing shade. She called him a sand N-word and a curry-scented biatch, mocking his Pakistani background like it was some sort of punchline. She did not stop there. She threw in a homophobic slur and even dragged his mother into it, all in a span of a few unhinged tweets. It was the kind of meltdown that made people ask, what is wrong with her? Twitter suspended her account almost immediately, but by then, the screenshots were everywhere. What could have been a petty artist versus artist moment turned into a full-blown racist outburst that destroyed whatever goodwill she had left. People were used to Azealia being messy online, but this was not just messy. It was hateful, cruel, and unapologetically racist. And once again, she proved that no one can tank Azealia Banks' career faster than Azealia Banks. Number 7, Munroe Bergdorf. Munroe Bergdorf is all about being unapologetically herself. She is outspoken, bold, and definitely not afraid to call things out. But in 2017, she went a little too far, even by her standards. She was working with L'Oreal for their diversity campaign, which was already a bit ironic considering what happened next. Bergdorf took to social media and wrote a post claiming that all white people are racist. She was trying to speak about structural racism and privilege, but her words were so blunt and generalized that it set off an explosion. L'Oreal dropped her from the campaign so fast you'd think she had insulted their entire product line. The backlash was intense, with people accusing her of being divisive and promoting hate. To be fair, she did try to clarify her comments later, saying her point was about institutional racism rather than personal attacks.
Really, because when I was saying all white people, I'm talking about the structural racism, I'm talking about systemic racism.
But by that point, her partnership with L'Oreal was already in the trash. Number 8, Jennifer Lopez. Now, J-Lo has been dominating the music scene for decades. But back in 2001, she found herself in hot water over lyrics that were supposed to be catchy, but ended up being offensive and racist. In her song, I Am Real, she casually dropped the N-word like it was just another piece of slang. And keep in mind, this was during the early 2000s where people were a lot less forgiving about cultural appropriation. The backlash was immediate. Critics were saying J-Lo had no business using the word, especially considering her Puerto Rican background. And while her fans tried to defend her, they kept arguing that she grew up in the Bronx where everyone supposedly used the word. It did not really help her case. The whole thing turned into a debate about who gets to use certain words and who does not. But instead of just owning up to it and moving on, Jennifer kind of just let the controversy die down on its own, which honestly was probably her best move. Sometimes silence is golden, especially when you have already stuck your foot in your mouth. Up next at number 9, we have Madonna, who's been breaking rules and stirring up drama since the 80s. But in 2014, she crossed the line. Even her fans could not defend. She posted an Instagram photo of her son Rocco and captioned it with the N-word, trying to sound all cool and edgy. Except it came off as wildly inappropriate and just plain tone-deaf. The backlash hit like a freight train. People were calling her out for using the word so casually, especially since she had zero claim to it, and her apology was almost as bad as the original post. She basically said it was not meant to be racist and that she was using it as a term of endearment. It is like she thought her intentions were all that mattered. Well, they were not. It's one thing to be provocative and push boundaries. It's another to be disrespectful and clueless. Madonna tried to brush it off like it was no big deal, but it was one of those times when her shock tactics came off as sad. Number 10, Abby Lee Miller. Abby Lee Miller's entire brand is based on tough love and brutal honesty. But in 2020, her tough love routine turned into something way uglier. She was called out for making racist remarks to young dancers and their mothers on her show, Dance Moms. And I'm not talking about one-off comments. It was a pattern of behavior that left several black dancers feeling uncomfortable and unwelcome. Adriana Smith, whose daughter Cameron was on the show, said that when she mentioned giving Cameron a platform as a young black dancer, Abby replied, "I know you grew up in the hood with only a box of 8 crayons, but I grew up in the country club with a box of 64. Another mother, Camille Bridges, said Abby treated her daughter differently because of her race, giving her few opportunities and making her feel like she did not belong on the team. And when the backlash started, Abby went into full apology mode, but the damage was done. Sponsors pulled out, and her reputation took a nosedive faster than one of her dancers in a failed backflip. It was a reminder that being blunt does not mean you have to be racist. Abby's entire act of being the no-nonsense coach just came off as toxic. And for someone whose career revolves around guiding young talent, that's a pretty rough look. Number 11. Roseanne Barr. In 2018, Roseanne Barr hit the self-destruct button on her career with one tweet. She referred to Valerie Jarrett, a black woman and former senior advisor to Barack Obama, as the offspring of the Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes. There was no way to spin it. She was mocking Jarrett's race and religion in one sentence by using racist ape comparisons, which have a long history of being used to dehumanize black people, and tying that to Islamophobia just for extra shock value. The fallout was instant. ABC canceled the newly reviewed Roseanne the same day, even though it was one of their top-rated shows. Her agency, ICM Partners, dropped her. Hulu pulled reruns, and several cast members, including Sarah Gilbert and Wanda Sykes, publicly distanced themselves. Roseanne claimed she did not know Jarrett was black and blamed Ambien for the tweet. But Ambien's parent company responded with a brutal statement: racism is not a known side effect. And honestly, this tweet was not out of character for her. Roseanne had spent years pushing racist and far-right conspiracy theories online. She once called George Soros a Nazi collaborator and spread birther lies about Obama. The Valerie Jarrett tweet just happened to be the one that finally burned everything down. Number 12, Paris Hilton. Back in 2007, a leaked video showed Paris Hilton at a house party, dancing to a notorious B.I.G. song. Out of nowhere, she blurted out the N-word. She was not quoting lyrics, not singing along, just casually tossing it in mid-sentence while laughing with her friends. And it did not stop there. The same video showed her using homophobic slurs like faggot, mocking people's appearances, and calling others disgusting. At one point, she made fun of her friend's teeth and joked about black people being gross while sipping from a red Solo cup like she was at a racist sleepover. Her publicist tried to smooth it over by blaming alcohol and saying she was young, but the internet doesn't forget, and neither do the receipts. Years later, another video surfaced showing her casually using the N-word again, this time while laughing and joking around with friends. So it clearly was not a one-time slip, it was a pattern. Her behavior reflected how normalized these slurs were in her circle and how little she cared about who they hurt. Paris has never really addressed these videos in any meaningful way. No formal apology, no reflection, just business as usual, perfume launches, and rebranded Y2K nostalgia. Number 13, Paula Deen. In 2013, Paula Deen was dragged into court over a racial discrimination lawsuit filed by a former employee. During her deposition, she was asked if she had ever used the N-word, and her response was, "Yes, of course," like it was a completely normal part of Southern charm. She went on to explain that she had once fantasized about hosting a plantation-style wedding where the entire waitstaff would be black men in white tuxedos. She said she got the idea after eating at a restaurant that did something similar and thought it looked classy. You know what does not scream classy? Recreating slave-era aesthetics at a wedding. Once that transcript became public, her empire crumbled fast. Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Smithfield Foods, and Caesars Entertainment all cut ties with her. The Food Network canceled her shows, and upcoming book deals were scrapped.
On celebrity chef Paula Deen, her career in ruins following her admission she had used a racial slur. So many sponsors dropping her now, and she has agreed to step away from her work at QVC.
She tried damage control with emotional interviews and apologies, but they only made things worse. Her infamous Today Show appearance featured her crying and saying, "I is what I is," which somehow made the situation even more uncomfortable. Number 14, Julianne Hough. Julianne Hough showed up to a 2013 Halloween party dressed as Crazy Eyes from Orange is the New Black. And for some reason, she thought blackface was part of the costume. Not just light makeup, her entire face, neck, and arms were painted in deep brown. She wore the orange jumpsuit, styled her hair in tight knots, and fully committed to the look, just in the worst possible way. Blackface has been publicly condemned for decades. It is tied to a long, ugly history of minstrel shows that dehumanize black people for laughs. So the idea that someone in 2013, especially a public figure, didn't know better is hard to believe. She apologized after the internet tore the look apart. She said she never intended to be racist and that she was just trying to honor the character. But nobody needed a tribute that involved painting herself brown. She could have easily wore the jumpsuit and wig without dragging in a racist tradition. The apology came off as the usual oops, did not mean it, but the whole thing proved that even in Hollywood, common sense apparently takes Halloween off.
Her apology is quite sincere, but I agree with the tweeter, like, no one around her told her no. Maybe,
retweet.
Maybe not.
Retweet.
Should have helped her out.
Number 15, Kelly Osbourne. In August 2015, Kelly Osbourne was a guest host on The View, and the conversation turned to Donald Trump's anti-immigration remarks.
How are you going to deal with immigration?
Build a giant wall.
Kelly decided to clap back, but ended up face-planting into one of the most racially insensitive moments in daytime TV. Trying to criticize Trump, she said, "If you kick every Latino out of this country, who's going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump?"
If you kick every Latino out of this country, then who is going to be cleaning your toilet, Donald Trump? Oh.
The second the words left her mouth, the studio fell into an awkward silence. Even her co-host looked stunned. Rosie Perez immediately jumped in to try and save the moment, pointing out that Latinos work in all kinds of jobs, not just janitorial roles. Kelly got defensive, tried to say she did not mean it like that, and insisted that her point was misinterpreted.
Latinos are not only the only people. I didn't mean it like that. Come on. No, I would never mean it like that.
But the damage was already done. She had reduced an entire group of people into a stereotype while trying to sound woke. It was not just a poorly phrased comment, it was a textbook example of someone revealing the bias behind her allyship. Later that day, Kelly posted an apology on Facebook saying she misspoke and that the comment did not reflect her true beliefs. But critics and viewers were not convinced. Many pointed out that it was not just a slip of the tongue, it was how she actually thought, and the apology felt more like PR cleanup than genuine remorse. The reason this moment stuck so hard was not just because of the line. It is because Kelly said it while attempting to defend Latinos. She saw herself as someone standing against Trump's racism, but instead she exposed how even people who think they're on the right side can hold and casually express racist assumptions. Honestly, you can't claim to be an ally if the only roles you imagine for people of color are the ones that serve you. Number 16, Miley Cyrus. In 2009, a photo surfaced of Miley Cyrus and a group of friends pulling their eyes back in a slanted gesture, mocking Asian features. It was not subtle. It was the classic racist pose that has been used for decades to make fun of Asian people. Miley was front and center in the shot, laughing like it was the most hilarious thing ever. The photo blew up, and the backlash was instant. The Organization of Chinese Americans issued a public statement condemning the gesture as offensive, disrespectful, and racist. They said it amounted to a slant eye pose, a demeaning gesture with a long history of dehumanizing Asian Americans. Miley tried to play it off by saying they were just goofing around and that people were overreacting. But no one was buying the just joking excuse. The OCA even said her explanation was not an apology, it was a justification, and they demanded a proper one. Eventually, Miley gave a half apology where she said she was sorry if anyone was offended, but it came across more like PR cleanup than genuine remorse. This was one of the first times people started noticing that Miley's wild child phase often included playing around with cultures she did not belong to, whether it was this or her later attempts at using hip-hop aesthetics to boost her career. Number 17, Paula Abdul. You may remember Paula Abdul as being the sweet judge on American Idol, but there was nothing sweet about some of the racist comments she made during her time on the show. Over the years, she was repeatedly called out for mocking contestants with accents or from immigrant backgrounds. She would mimic how they spoke, exaggerate their pronunciations, or laugh awkwardly after someone introduced themselves with a non-American name. And it was not just a one-off moment. It happened multiple times across several seasons. In one audition, a contestant from Eastern Europe nervously sang in broken English, and Paula responded by mocking his accent during feedback, laughing along with the panel. In another case, she made a joke about a contestant's name sounding made up, while Simon smirked and Randy laughed. These moments did not always make headlines back then, but in today's world, they are impossible to ignore. Several former contestants, especially those from Asia and Middle Eastern backgrounds, have spoken up about how the judges, Paula especially, made them feel like their identity was more of a punchline than anything else. The show never publicly addressed it, but a look back at old clips makes it painfully obvious. At number 18, Chelsea Handler. Chelsea has always marketed herself as the comedian who says the unfiltered truth, but sometimes her truth sounds more like racism dressed up as punchlines. Over the years, she has made a number of jokes that did not just miss the mark, they hit squarely on offensive stereotypes. One of the most called out moments was a tweet she posted joking about a black man being late because of CP time, short for colored people time. That is an old racist stereotype used to suggest black people are always late, a phrase with deep roots in anti-black mockery. It was not edgy, it was not clever, it was just a tired racist trope tweeted out like it was 1952. In her stand-up specials, she has also made multiple digs at Asian people using stereotypes as lazy punchlines. She once joked that the only thing she learned from an Asian ex-boyfriend was how to do nails and multiply. That's something you would expect from a middle school bully trying to go viral on Vine. Chelsea's defense has always been the same. I make fun of everyone, but comedy that punches everyone does not really work when you keep aiming down. At some point, if every joke about a marginalized group ends up with a stereotype, it stops being satire and just becomes your worldview with a laugh track. And while Chelsea has occasionally acknowledged being problematic, her habit of dipping into racial stereotypes for quick laughs has not aged well, especially in a world that is no longer giving comedians a free pass for being loud and offensive at the same time. Number 19, Doja Cat. In 2020, Doja Cat found herself in the middle of a major controversy when internet users unearthed an old 2015 track she made called Didn't Do Nothing. The title comes from a racist meme used in far-right online communities to mock black people who are victims of police brutality. It is meant to imitate how some protesters say, "He did not do nothing," and turn that into a punchline, basically dehumanizing victims and minimizing racial violence. Doja tried to explain that her goal was to flip the meaning and reclaim it, but the song itself did not reflect that intent. It used the slur in its original tone, not as satire or critique, and critics pointed out that it sounded like she was playing into the same racist narrative rather than challenging it. It also did not help that around the same time, clips and screenshots emerged of her hanging out in alt-right adjacent online chat rooms. These were not just weird corners of the internet. Some of these rooms were filled with white supremacists and trolls who regularly joked about race, violence, and misogyny. Doja was caught laughing at their comments, participating in weird role-play convos, and using racially charged language herself. She later claimed she did not realize what kind of spaces she was in and insisted she was not endorsing any of it, but people were not buying it.
I'm going to start with, I'm very sorry to anybody who's taken offense, to anybody who I've hurt,
She issued a public apology and said she was young, insecure, and trying to be provocative. But the combination of the song, the chat rooms, and her overall online behavior painted a picture that made a lot of fans step back and rethink everything. Number 20, Sunny Hostin. Sunny Hostin is known for being outspoken on The View, especially when it comes to race and politics. But in 2024, after Donald Trump won re-election, she did not just express political frustration, she made sweeping, racially charged generalizations that exposed a whole different kind of bias.
And whether we agree or not with Donald Trump's plans,
Black people
they thought that he was reflective.
One of the poorest demographics in this country, but they voted for Kamala Harris.
But there was a split, and more of them voted for Donald Trump.
Right after the election, Sunny went on air and flat out blamed uneducated white women for Trump's victory. Not white voters in general, not even conservative voters, specifically uneducated white women, as if voting behavior can be boiled down to one stereotype and a diploma. She did not stop there. A few weeks later, while discussing Kamala Harris's campaign struggles, she said that Latinos did not support Harris, were motivated by sexism and internalized misogyny. According to Sunny, the only possible reason a Latino voter would not support Harris was because they hated women, not policy disagreements, not party loyalty, just straight up gender bias. And this was not the first time she painted entire groups with a broad brush. She has previously referred to Latino Republicans as oxymorons, suggesting that being both Latino and conservative is somehow contradictory or shameful. What makes Sunny's comments especially problematic is that she usually speaks under the banner of progressive values, yet her own words reinforce the very identity-based generalizations she claims to fight against. Instead of trying to understand why people vote the way they do, she jumps to, "You are part of the problem," based on race, education level, or gender. Critics from both liberal and conservative sides called her out for her comments, accusing her of elitism, reverse racism, and hypocrisy. Sunny never really walked back her comments either. No apology, no clarification. Just the assumption that her identity gives her a pass to generalize others. And that is exactly what makes her one of the worst offenders on this list. Because when the double standards come from someone who claims to be against them, it hits differently. So yeah, next time a celeb posts a Notes app apology with "I have grown since then" in size 12 font, just remember these are just performances from the mastered pretenders. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.